This is the Athletic Football Podcast weekend preview as we approach the final third of the season. Suitably excited. I'm Michael Bailey, in for Adam Leventhal this week. Our YouTube viewers will notice we're on a virtual record this week, but Adam and co will be back in the studio next time. Let's welcome our guests today. We've got John Mackenzie. Hello, John. How are you?
Hello, Michael. It's been a while.
Has been. It's lovely to see your face, albeit from a significant distance. All good?
All good, yes.
That'll do for me. Tim Spiers is here as well. Tim, I bet you're a little bit disappointed Adam isn't actually here this week, aren't you, after all the stick he gave you?
A little, but that can wait. Don't worry. Save for next week.
I mean, I prompted that just so to make sure you'd remember. Keep it in mind. Nnamdi Onyeagwara is here as well. Nnamdi, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm tired. I was live blogging the wonders of deadline day, which, there was still obviously a deadline that had to be reached. So therefore, my night wasn't any shorter than it needed to be. But, we saw it through. And I would argue we had a better time of it than West Ham. So there we go. Right. Let's crack on, shall we? The Premier League is coming thick and fast. So we enter February. We had a midweek round of fixtures that saw Liverpool maintain their 5-point lead at the top after demolishing Chelsea 4-1. Meanwhile, at the bottom, Luton got a 4-0 win at Kenilworth Road against Brighton. They have now jumped out of the bottom three at the expense of Everton. This weekend, and I know Adam does this, it's a fixture formation of 5-4-1. Which does sound actually a legitimate way of playing. That's from Saturday to Monday. Early Saturday fixture is Everton against Spurs. Then we go to the 3 o'clocks, Brighton against Crystal Palace, which is a derby, isn't it? A weird derby. Newcastle versus Luton, Burnley against Fulham. And then the late kickoff on Saturday is Sheffield United against Aston Villa. Excellent stuff. We move on to Sunday for our 4, which is the 2 p.m. kickoffs. They are Man United against West Ham, which we'll be talking about, I'm sure. Chelsea versus Wolves, Bournemouth against Forest. And then the late game on Sunday, Arsenal versus Liverpool. Who knew? That's going to be exciting. I think we might talk about that one as well. Monday evening then, to round off the weekend, Brentford against Manchester City. But I think we should start the show in North London. Yes, Arsenal against Liverpool. That is the late game on Sunday. Arsenal have steadied the ship a bit. They've got 2 wins in a row. The last one of those coming in midweek against Forest, where they never win. Nnamdi. That's it's a bit of a coup to get something there. Meanwhile, Liverpool come into this one off that 4-1 win against Chelsea I mentioned a bit ago, and it wasn't so long ago that they beat Arsenal 2-0 at the Emirates in the FA Cup, which, as we know, is an excellent precursor to the Premier League. Nnamdi, can you let us know, as an Arsenal fan, what's your reading of this one? How are you feeling going into it? Are you confident?
Admittedly, I'm not overconfident. It's I'm not sure if you can say a game in early February is a title decider, but this is definitely getting close to it. I mean, yeah, if we win on Sunday, I mean, we're 2 points off Liverpool and firmly back in the title race, and if we don't, yeah, we'll be 8 points, and it looks increasingly harder. So I'm not overly confident, but I would hope that Mikel Arteta and the team, and hopefully the Arsenal fans on Sunday as well, recognise the significance of the game and the implications that it can have. And I'm hoping that they prepare accordingly and we get the points.
I mean, it surprised me how far off they are their tally from last season at this point, because I think they're sort of 8 points, one or the other, 5 points, 8 points below where they were at this stage last season, where obviously they were flying and people were like, this is incredible. So just to get anywhere near their previous tally, I mean, that's a bit of a drop off, isn't it?
Yeah, it's See, I always say that I think comparing this season to last season is last season we were very much a surprise package. I probably don't think a lot of teams in the Premier League expected us to be as good as we were, and then it took them a good couple months to find out how to play against us, and especially coming back after the World Cup break, I felt that we were coming up against a lot more defensive blocks and a lot more people saying, well, if you try and deny this team space, maybe we'll make it a bit harder to play. So I think coming into the season, we've found coming up against those blocks much more regularly. It has impacted our points tally. It's a hard thing to do for the best of teams. And essentially we've been found out. And I guess now coming back from the winter break, I guess we just need to find a new way to play.
And then you need maybe a new player to bring in. And Emil Smith-Rowe started last time out at Forest. Is he someone that Arsenal have missed? Because, I feel like he's someone Arsenal supporters really like. Tell me if I'm wrong. But also that they really want to see flourish, and it just hasn't happened for various reasons, I'm sure. But it must be great to see him back in, and the high hopes for that.
Yeah, definitely. He's a real fans favorite. I think he's a player that a lot of fans can relate to, being a local boy and that sort of thing. And he's a player that yeah hasn't had chances, but probably some fans don't think he's deserved that. He's whenever he's come on, he's always looked good, but he's always come on in bit parts and never really been given a time to really show what he can do. In the last 2 years, I think the game against Nottingham Forest was his first away start for us in 2 years. So he's, especially when I was talking about the aforementioned deep blocks that we play against a lot, he's a player that really does have the keys to open up some of those locks, and I would love to see him start on Sunday.
John, I've got a couple of notes here. Kai Havertz has been labelled here as underwhelming. I agree or disagree. But also, Smith-Rowe playing in the left 8 role. If I say that, what flashes, what sparks in that wonderful mind of yours?
Well, there's two questions there, isn't there? First one is about Kai Havertz being underwhelming. I think the point to take away here is that Kai Havertz and Emil Smith-Rowe are very different types of player. There's been some games this season where having Kai Havertz as that left 8 has been quite useful for Arsenal. He's popped up with a few late goals, particularly box crashing as a second striker. He offers something quite different, at least going forward at the end of games in that kind of position. But there is a question of whether or not the way that he's been playing the left 8 role has actually had issues as well. So they've had to pick up late goals in games through him because of the way that he plays the left 8 role as well. So with Emil Smith-Rowe, I think what you get really nice from him that you don't get from anyone else in the Arsenal squad at the moment, two things. One, he's a really good half-turn player, so he can receive the ball in pockets of space, turn and carry the ball forward. And then when he is carrying the ball forward, he's a runner on the ball, and Arsenal don't have a huge amount of players like that, particularly in the midfield areas as well. So I think that, yeah, with Emil Smith-Rowe, what you're getting is maybe a little bit more link up between the build-up unit and the attacking unit, which I think at times this season Arsenal have struggled with. Their build-up has at times been a little bit too ponderous, and has led to them having to sort of drift out into wide areas, which has led to all these questions about whether or not Arsenal need a different profile of striker as well. So yeah, I think he offers something very different in that role. I think I prefer him usually in the right-hand side, but he's obviously not going to depose Martin Ødegaard from that position as well. But I think for the moment, he is offering something there. He also is able to drift into wide areas quite nicely as well. So you get a little bit more flexibility in interchanging with the fullback or the wide forward on that side. And I think that can be really useful as well for breaking down low blocks as well. So yeah, I think he just offers something quite different to Kai Havertz, a different type of profile. And yeah, I think whether or not Havertz is underwhelming is to the listener's discretion, but he definitely offers something different. Yeah.
Only we could do a podcast poll on that one, but let's save that for another. I'll save that for when Adam's back. Tim, we're quite. Are you excited about this game, Tim? First of all,
fairly. Yeah, fairly. The cup game was great, and they both played pretty strong teams that day. So hopefully we get something similar.
That would be good. I mean, it feels like there could be the potential for loads of goals here, which I guess also makes it possible it might be goalless, as you know, football works. You can get all sorts of scores. One battle that may decide which we get out of the results. Gabriel Martinelli, he has more goal contributions against Liverpool in all competitions than he has against any other opponent for Arsenal. That's 4 goals and 2 assists. That bodes well. Liverpool's Trent Alexander-Arnold is back, and he's assisted 6 goals in his last 7 Premier League games against Arsenal. That's the duel, isn't it, Tim? That's the one.
Is it though, Michael? Because I'm seeing suggestions that young Connor Bradley is so good that he must play at right back, and with Szoboszlai injured, there's the suggestion that Trent Alexander-Arnold might play in midfield instead, which would deprive us of this battle. Yeah, it probably is one of the key areas of the pitch. I mean, you mentioned Martinelli's got 4 goals against Arsenal. That's also the same number he scored in the entire Premier League season this year, which kind of shows you how his goal output has reduced. And that's a big problem for Arsenal, really. You know, they've got a number of very good, very talented players who just haven't hit top form this season. If you look at Martinelli, Trossard's dipped off a bit recently. Smith Rowe, we've barely seen for a season and a half now. Havertz hit and miss. Vieira hasn't really sort of proven himself when he's played, or he's been injured. But that's the conundrum for Arteta. You know, his team's pretty fixed in terms of Rice and Odegaard in midfield, and then Jesus and Saka up front. But it's those other two positions that have proven a bit problematic, and I think that's having a big impact on Arsenal in general, because they don't seem to have as many match winners as last year, which is why I put Liverpool as favourites certainly for this one, with all the momentum we've got since Klopp's announcement, etc. Yeah, it's going to be an excellent game, but I would definitely sort of favour Liverpool going into it.
Oh, yeah, I was going to ask about the Klopp departure, which I'm sure we're all aware of. It's a narrative, isn't it, John? We've got to talk about the fact that Jurgen Klopp leaving is going to fire up Liverpool, whereas actually it seemed to leave a lot of big questions, and Virgil van Dijk saying things that he then had to clarify later and stuff over whether he was committed to the future. And as someone who's followed Norwich City a lot, I know was aware of the FA Cup game where Liverpool sort of strolled past Norwich and didn't feel particularly any more emotional than other games. But maybe I'm being unfair. I don't know. But can you sense that there's a renewed purpose from Liverpool?
I don't know. We're talking now about psychological impulses and stuff, and I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. I also don't know when the players will have been made aware of it, because I believe the conversations were happening at the end of last year, calendar year. So presumably the players will have known before now, so the timings maybe don't match up so much. But it definitely sets them up for a really nice denouement this season, doesn't it? With Klopp being the guy who's going to move on at the end of this season, it would be a really nice bookend to his time at Liverpool to actually win the league, and I'm sure the players have got that motivation at the back of their minds. So yeah, it definitely feels that way at the moment. The momentum just doesn't stop. They roll on, and they look inevitable.
I think in terms of obliging away teams, you couldn't get two stronger candidates than Norwich and Chelsea. So we maybe look too much into these things and they're doing it for Klopp and all that stuff. Well, no, Liverpool, they're the best team in the country this season, so they're going to be awful teams. Sorry, Michael, at home. But yeah, I do think it's maybe a slight glimpse into what we're about to see for the next 3 months. Liverpool have often been about momentum and energy and atmosphere. They bloody love that stuff, and Klopp's really sort of bought into it and built on that. And fighting on four fronts with him leaving, and the emotion and energy that all brings, it sort of feels like the ultimate culmination of all the things he's instilled in the club over the next few months. If they go and win sort of 2-3 trophies, as John says, an amazing bookend and a sort of fairy tale finish, really. I think they win the league now, personally, if they can hold their nerve in the big games and not let the emotion get too much. I think they've got Man City at home next month, and obviously this game would be key ones. But yeah, you do have to have an element of control. It's not all about just passion and momentum. But yeah, I think this is a big driving force for them now for the next few months.
Indeed. And you mentioned Conor Bradley as well, Tim. John, I'm going to come to you, because there's a suggestion here, written here, that obviously, when Trent plays, well, when they play with traditional fullbacks, this is the one, isn't it? When Liverpool play with traditional fullbacks, they're actually a bit more dangerous, dynamic than when Trent's doing sort of two jobs at once.
But Liverpool fans have definitely put me off that. So yeah, I made some comments about the fact that they look quite good with a traditional fullback on the right hand side the other day against Chelsea. The reason why I was being tongue-in-cheek is because the whole season I've been having this sort of ongoing debate with myself about Trent Alexander-Arnold inverting. And yeah, look, on midweek they did play with a traditional fullback in Conor Bradley. They did use Joe Gomez as a little bit more of an inverting fullback as well. But the reason why I've constantly pushed back against the inverting fullback at Liverpool is not because I don't think it works. I think it does. I've got a 15-minute video on the Athletic FC feed.
There's always a video.
There's always a video.
There is.
Yeah. I have a 15-minute video saying that, I misread the way that they're inverting fullbacks, because they've actually tweaked the role so that it works for Trent Alexander-Arnold now. But I've always maintained that actually there's two different levels that you need to talk about whenever things like this happen. One of them is the tactical, technical level, where you're talking about what are the upsides that you're getting structurally from doing something like that. But on the other hand, there's always the individual upside as well. And when you have a ball striker who's as goated as Trent Alexander-Arnold, you can play him in a different role, which maybe doesn't suit him particularly well, and you can then tweak that role so that it fits in better, and you get a huge amount of upside from it as well. So I think the interesting thing with for me with Liverpool is that you can play Alexander-Arnold inverted as a fullback and get a lot of benefits from that. And he obviously helps them with their ball progression in that area. But then you can play a fullback like Conor Bradley, who's going to play the role a little bit more traditionally and just has been incredible. It's worth saying that as well. It's not just that, they brought in a youngster who's playing right back. 6 goal involvements from him. He's an incredible young player and looks really exciting, but you can play him in that way, and actually it solves a lot of some of the structural problems that you have when you play Trent Alexander-Arnold inverted. So as Tim alluded to before, there's questions about how do you fit these two into the same team? Can you play Alexander-Arnold as a central midfielder with Bradley in the right back position, and can it all work out? So yeah, the point wasn't that Liverpool looked better with the traditional fullback on that side, but the point was that they can work just as well with a traditional fullback on that side as well, and which makes the whole thing quite interesting, I think, for people who are interested in the tactical side of the game.
Well, I think you've done a sound job of clarifying yourself there, John. Great work. Never do sarcasm again on the internet. Nnamdi, I want to bring it back to you and to Arsenal, because I think, if Arsenal are going to have any hope of winning the title, they've surely got to win this game. Where do you see the key battles for them in having success against Liverpool and doing something other than losing 2-0 like they did in the cup?
Well, this would be the third time that we've played Liverpool since December 23rd, I think was the first game at Anfield. Both games were in the game, really and truly. I mean, yeah, we didn't I wouldn't say that we were outplayed in either of those games. Defensive mistakes did cost us, but really and truly I do feel like we created enough chances in both games, enough chances to win both games. And I do think it was just our finishing that really let us down at Anfield and at the Emirates in the FA Cup. So I would hope that we would have learned from that. Those mistakes would be rectified. And I think probably the big thing going into Sunday would be, I would presume that we'll go and play the way we play. We'll have a high line. Zinchenko will invert. It'll be very interesting to see if it's Smith Rowe or Havertz that play in that left day, or someone else. You never know how Arteta thinks. But I do think one of the big things would be that we'll make our chances, and hopefully if we finish them, we might have a different end to the game than we did the last 2 times.
Which I guess leads us nicely onto predictions, which I believe is something that gets done on this podcast. You've all started shifting in your seats a little bit at this point, which is interesting. I don't know if I need to do a prediction as well on behalf of Adam. I suppose I could do. I'm definitely not going to go first, though. Tim, you can go first.
I'll go for a repeat of the FA Cup, 2-0 Liverpool.
I'm just going to wait for the fire alarm to stop. That's the prediction alarm. Time for predictions. So you're going for a repeat, Tim?
Repeats, yeah, 2-0.
A repeat. John?
I have a feeling that Arsenal might do it this time. I agree with Nnamdi that the games have been quite close. The general, I think, ebb and flow of the games has been that Liverpool have made it too easy for us to drag Arsenal into their sort of more open transitional game. I think in the first half, against them in the FA Cup, they were able to control the game a little bit better. So I think this game's going to come down to, can Arsenal maintain control throughout the whole game and stop getting dragged into this sort of more transitional battle that Liverpool are going to thrive on, make the game chaotic and see what they can get out of it. And I think this time around they will, and they are going to win 2-1.
2-1 to Arsenal. Nnamdi?
Yeah, Arsenal going to win. Arsenal are going to win this game. I mean, yeah, I think we have to, and I think the significance of that will be recognised on Sunday, and I hope that we will learn from our finishing mistakes we've made the last 2 games, and I think Arsenal will win 2-1.
Blimey.
I'll look like a fool on Monday, but I stand by it.
I'll be there with you, don't worry.
We're battling Liverpool fans on Twitter together, John.
we've got 2 Arsenal wins there, haven't we? And one Liverpool repeat.
Yeah, which considering Liverpool have lost one domestic game in all comps all season, and that was when they had 9 men in stoppage time at Spurs, is bold and brave. But that says a lot about these 2 men.
I mean, this is one of the toughest games they're going to play this season, right?
That is true, John. And that is why
That's
I'm going to
true.
predict. I'm going to predict a 1-1 draw. A late Joe Gomez equaliser.
Wow.
I know, right? But that doesn't matter, does it? That's
Really
just
in the spirit of Adam Leventhal there.
that's
What we like.
just a bonus element to that one. Right, next, off to Goodison Park. So kicking off the weekend on Saturday, Everton versus Spurs. Everton are winless in 5. They drew with Fulham in midweek. That wasn't that exciting. They are back in the relegation zone as well. Spurs are back in the top 4 after their 3-2 success against Brentford, which Tim was quite a feisty occasion, wasn't it? So that was plenty good fun there. Everton are a curious one, Tim, because they are actually having a decent season. It's just this points deduction has thrown them right in the mire, and they might be getting another one. So it must be playing with their heads completely.
Yes, there was a sense of real familiarity about Goodison Park last weekend when they were booed off at half-time and full-time after, a few weeks of respite and technically we're 10th and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it's back to normal. I mean, they missed Decore a lot. I think more than most Premier League teams. He's sort of the one player that they can't do without. They're more of a one-man team in some respects than most teams in the league. But yeah, they just haven't got goal scorers, Michael, and that wasn't resolved in January because obviously they've not got the luxury of spending much money. So they're stuck relying, as they have been for many sort of seasons, really on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and 3 goals in 18 for him this season. Doesn't bode well really for the rest of the campaign. You look at the fact that only 4 of their squad have reached 3 goals in all competitions this season. That's Decore on 6. Calvert-Lewin's got 4 in all comps. Harrison's got 3, and Beto's got 3. And we know he's not the answer either. So I applaud the way that Sean Dyche is trying to do things, but I do wonder if he may have to go classic Dyche ball pretty soon because they need results more than anything. It's sort of we're into February now, and Luton are picking up crazy results, and Dyche might have to go back to his sort of tried and trusted formula to get some results here, because that's obviously the be all and end all.
I'm just looking at FB Ref as is my one, and Calvert-Lewin is the worst performing player per shooting. He's 5 goals under where you might expect him to be, and Beto is 2 goals off where he should be as well. So we're already talking 7 goals there that they're you would expect them to have got, which they haven't got. So definitely struggling on the goal scoring front. And
Sean Dyche did actually try and play them together, didn't he? Which is partly through a lack of midfielders, but also because Sean Dyche 4-4-2. I mean, I'm imagining in his like managerial office, he's got a folder up on the top shelf. Where it's like, right, it's time for Dyche ball, lads, and he pulls it up and then he opens it up and away he goes.
There'll be an alarm. There'll be an alarm at the training ground, Michael. Today, the Dyche ball alarm going off. Right, lads, here we go.
It's funny though this season though, because Dyche ball has been very different from what people have expected it to be, and they have been putting up the numbers in the attacking phase that you don't usually expect to see from a Sean Dyche team. So it has been kind of fascinating to see that he's clearly gone away in his interim between jobs and worked a little bit on the attacking side of the game.
I mean, yeah, it's no goals in the last 3 Premier League matches, 41 shots without success, which in my head, Nnamdi says you're not taking the shots from the right places, or you're really bad at shooting.
Yeah, it could have a different it could have a real variety of narratives. I think it definitely is interesting, important, sorry, to mention obviously on the other side of the pitch that they actually are doing very, very well. Of course, with I know since the start of December, they've had more clean sheets than any other team with 6 in 9. So I do think it might not be going to plan on the offensive side, but I think definitely especially with the emergence of Jared Branthwaite coming in next to James Tarkowski, is definitely a player that's had to bide his time. I think his loan spot PSV did him wonders last year, and he's come in now and started 19 games this season and formed a really solid centre-back partnership with Tarkowski. So I think if they can build on what looks like a very strong and rigid defence, If Calvert-Lewin can add to what is 4 goals this season, then yeah, you never know.
You never know. I mean, Tim, are you a Jared Branthwaite fan? Can you see where his real strengths lie and where the ceiling is? Every player has a ceiling. Is he banging his head on his yet?
No, I don't think so. I think there's more to come from him. There's lots of talk about him getting into the England squad, which is it's one of those where it's a tournament too soon, isn't it? Really, you can't see him squeaking in. Southgate's got quite a few centre back options that he's looked at in the last few months. Obviously, Southgate, Maguire and Stones, but then there's Dunk's been one who's sort of clawed his way into the squad recently. Tamori's still knocking around as well. Mark Gay, of course, as well. So yeah, I don't think there's time for him to get in ahead of the Euros, but 2026 World Cup, he could be one of the ones that's identified. I think England definitely got a weakness at centre half, and if he can continue his progression, yeah, he's certainly got all the attributes to make it.
I mean, we've been speaking a lot about Everton's lack of goals, Tim, but they're coming up against Spurs. Spurs are free. They give you space, but they also can hurt you really badly. I mean, if you haven't scored in 41 shots, facing Spurs is a good thing.
Well, do you know, it was a fascinating game in December, just before Christmas. Spurs beat Everton 2-1 at home, and I was amazed at Dicey's approach that day. They were so open, it was ridiculous, and I thought they're playing into Spurs' hands here. But Spurs were lacking a bit of confidence at the time. Should have scored more than 2, but didn't. And Everton should have won that game. They created a shed load of chances. I think it's McNeil and Harrison were fantastic on the day. Danjuma should have scored a couple off the bench. They were brilliant. I loved watching them, but they only scored 1 goal. And that is their problem. If you're going to be a little bit more open, you've got to back that up with goals. But one thing they will get, certainly at the weekend, is chances, because, anyone who saw a fantastic game for Spurs against Brentford in the week, whoever Spurs are playing, they're going to let you have chances. Spurs are a bit of a funny one at the moment. I, sort of covered them for most of the season, but I still haven't got a clue where they're going to finish. They're so sort of unpredictable, I guess, by their very nature. But they've certainly got an awful lot of attacking options now. Werner had a great game in the week against Brentford. And the fact that they could drop Brennan Johnson to the bench and bring him on as an impact sub, which of course he did, scored with his first touch, is exactly what you want from him. So yeah, now they're getting players back. Maddison's sort of feeling his way back in. He's not at his best yet, but he's back. Son will be back soon from the Asia Cup. Bissouma will be back. Sarr will be back. They're close to having full strength team/squad again. And we know what they did with that at the start of the season. They went 10 unbeaten and won 8. So they're certainly capable of doing that again. And if so, I know Postecoglou was sort of joking about them being in the title race in the week, but if they can reproduce that run again with no Europe, the only team in that group to have no Europe, then they will be back in the title race.
There we go. Tim selling Spurs' title credentials, John. I mean, they are clearly in a title race because they're close enough to sort of be amongst them. It's very different to sitting here going, I think they might win it, because, you can be in a race until, you trip over yourself and everyone leaves you behind.
Yeah, Spurs are a weird one this season because the underlying numbers, Claxton.
Yes. I've been waiting for that.
Yeah, puts them very much in mid-table. And, I think there's reasons for it. I think they're an outlier team. Their coach is doing stuff that no one else is really doing. And I think it takes time for teams to catch up when that kind of thing happens. So they've probably just been on the right side of variance a little bit. You mentioned the Everton game, Tim. They actually, they XG'd Everton in that game, Spurs. So they're coming out on the right side of some of these games. And look, when you're an elite side who's generating a lot of chances and you have a finisher like Heung-min Son versus this season's Dominic Calvert-Lewin, you are going to come out on top more often than not in those tight games. But you can't ride on the coattails of luck forever in that respect. And before the Spurs fans come baying after my blood for using the word luck of their team, I do think there are questions to be asked of Spurs and the level that they're at. So I don't consider them to be viable title contenders, but I also don't think that's what they wanted to be at the beginning of the season. I think they wanted to get back into the top 4, and that's where they're currently sitting. They're playing a really exciting brand of football. They're winning over a lot of neutral fans, and everyone likes to watch the games that they're playing because they're so open. So yeah, I'm still on the fence a little bit about about Spurs. I think, there's always caveats. They've had a lot of players out injured. They've not always had the best profile of players to fit into various places in their starting 11. And there's an argument to be made that once they start being able to fill their starting 11 with the sorts of players that really suit the system, then they can really take off. But right now, they're still in the sort of in the space in my head, which is like, still need to see more. Want to get a more solid grasp of what their level actually is.
Nnamdi, Spurs in the title race.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you'd have to say so, I think. Echoing what John said, it really isn't up and down title race at the moment. And just like Tim said as well, if they are able to put a run together like they did at the start of the season, I guess at the moment, I think the only team you can say that has shown any sort of title winning consistency is Liverpool. And so that hasn't suffered any sort of drop off. So I mean, if Tottenham are able to put a good consistent run of wins together, starting with this weekend, then yeah, you have to say they are definitely in the title race.
I'm guessing they're not finishing above Arsenal though.
I hope not.
Richarlison is now on 7 goals in 7 Premier League games. He's on fire. And also, like, I feel like him and also Timo Werner maybe sometimes get a slightly hard time, Nnamdi. They feel like their players that attract stick, whereas sometimes they do good things and maybe they don't get the credit from it. I mean, Werner played a part in one of the goals for Spurs in midweek.
Yeah, I think that's really built on narratives. I mean, I'm actually a big fan of Timo Werner. I know there were quotes going around about Timo Werner talking about his how he's not the biggest fan of goal scoring or something to that effect. Which probably were taken out of context. Gabriel has just said similar things. I do think he's a very useful player. I do think he's a player that you can actually see why Spurs have gone for and given a chance, especially with the way they play. Especially with players around him, the sort of likes of James Maddison. If you're looking at Timo Werner, who's a very quick player that will stretch defenses and make interesting runs, then you've got a player like Maddison, which will have no problem finding him. So I think Werner and Richarlison especially was a player that I wasn't expecting to catch fire in the way he has, which has been a boost for Spurs this season. So yeah, they're definitely players that can be useful in this quote unquote title run.
Yeah, he's backtracked nicely. Well done, Nnamdi. Let's get predictions. What are you going to go for, Nnamdi? I'll start with you.
I think Spurs win 2-0.
Timothy?
3-1 to Spurs.
I already had that in my head before you said it, Tim. So I'll say that as well. John?
Yeah, Spurs win. Let's go 3-2. Why not?
Oh, sorry about that, Everton fans. Right. Well, next up, it's David Moyes heading back to Old Trafford once again. Well, one of the Sunday 2 p.m. kickoffs sees West Ham head to Old Trafford. They won the reverse fixture 2-0 in December, so we're going for their first double over United since 2006-07, which is a long time ago. Tim, before looking ahead, let's start with that crazy game against Wolves last night. Some people may have missed it. Do you want to kind of sum it up in, like, I don't know, 3 sentences?
Man United got really lucky. No, yeah, it was an amazing game. Didn't see that coming, to be honest. United sort of took advantage, I thought, of what was a really passive Wolves team and went sort of 2-0 up. And then there was an awful foul from Casemiro on Neto for a blatant penalty, which Wolves scored to make it 2-1. And then, McTominay scored with his first touch off the bench to make it 3-1. And you think it's all over. And then, Kilman sort of grabbed one back 5 minutes from time. And then you had this bizarre period in stoppage time where United was sort of pushing for a fourth when they were 3-2 up. And they left themselves exposed to a counter-attack 3-on-3 from a corner, I think it was. So, yeah, Neto does what he does and sticks one in the bottom corner for 3-3 in the 95th minute. And then 2 minutes later, the kid, Manu, scores a phenomenal winning goal with just the most ridiculous sort of touch, composure, spatial awareness and precision to stick one in the bottom corner, and wild scenes with that away end, or that away side as it is at Molineux, for a remarkable 4-3 win, which, I really didn't see coming at all.
It was such a good goal from such a young player who's only just bursting through. I think he's 18, isn't he? Amari Fosun assisted the goal. He's 19. And it was the, I've got to try and get this all right now. It was only the second winning goal in the Premier League ever to be both scored and assisted by a teenager. Do you know the last two teenagers involved in that? Anyone want to guess?
James Milner. This was James Milner, isn't it?
Makeda. It's hard to pick an assist, isn't it? But yeah, Makeda.
Is there a little bit of Bukayo Saka in there?
I'm going to put you all out of your misery. The last time it was Cristiano Ronaldo, 19, assisting Wayne Rooney, 18, for Manchester United against Liverpool.
Nice.
So there we are.
That's the only other time it's happened. Did you say?
It was only the second winning goal in Premier League history, which I'm sure I would have said first time, he says, hopefully. So there we go. A moment of history by John, a player who, I mean, you know, United season has been absolutely all over the place, but he is like rapidly becoming a proper highlight, a breakthrough act as well.
Yeah, it's incredible to see what he's doing as an 18-year-old. He's playing in a role where we've seen a number of players being signed for, you know, £100 million, showing how important that role is in the modern game. And he's slotted in really well. He's slotted in alongside a player of the pedigree of Casemiro, regardless of where you want to place Casemiro right now in the scale of defensive midfielders. But he's come in and he's not looking out of place. And you know, that's probably the highest compliment you can pay for a player in that kind of position. Obviously, you don't expect players in that position to pop up with a winning goal at the end of games either. But yeah, as has already been said, incredible composure. We've seen him score a couple of goals now, and with that remarkable calmness, I think, to just slot the ball into the bottom corner. So yeah, an incredible player on their hands, and I suppose a bright spot in an otherwise fairly unremarkable season for Manchester United. And yeah, let's not forget that if that goal doesn't happen, the conversations we'd be having this morning would be same old Man United, like screwing up 2-goal leads on a couple of scenarios in the same game. So an incredible young player, and it'll be exciting to see how he develops.
I was thinking,
I mean, they'll ruin him, John. You know they will. That's exactly what's going to happen.
well, the good thing, he's got plenty of time to be ruined because he's only 18, so at least they're starting early. I was thinking about this on the way in this morning, that I think Manchester United seem to be quite a bit of fun to watch. I mean, probably not if you're a Man United fan, but you know, there's goals all over the place. They can't really manage a game. If they're behind, they might well win it. If they're leading with 10 minutes to go, they could quite easily throw it away. Someone who's probably quite thankful to Kobe Mainu, Nnamdi, is Marcus Rashford, because he had quite a week of it. He comes back into the team having everything been resolved internally, which I'm sure was left very internal to only internal people at United. I should take the moment to direct you all to Talk of the Devils, which is our dedicated Manchester United podcast that has all the reaction from the game last night, as well as how United have handled Rashford. It has to be said, Nnamdi, he took his goal wonderfully well. I mean, for all the talk of all the other stuff and night outs in Belfast and what have you, that was the moment where you're like, oh yeah, he's actually a really good footballer.
Yeah, no, it was a brilliant goal. It was a goal that he definitely needed. It was definitely a goal that was would have went a long way to silencing critics. I mean, I feel like touching on what you said about United being interesting to watch, I feel like there was so many different narratives in that team, especially just yesterday alone. I mean, if you go back to 2016, Rashford is this burgeoning young kid out of the youth academy that can do no wrong, and that looks like Kobe Mainu has taken that role at the moment. So seeing Rashford with what he's gone through, stick that one away early on to set United on their way. Yeah, I think it was very, very important.
What do we do about West Ham? They drew 1-1 home to Bournemouth. Calvin Phillips got his debut and within 3 minutes had laid on a goal for Bournemouth, which obviously wasn't part of the plan. I mean, John, they were booed off, weren't they, West Ham? I think at half-time and full-time, so a double booing, which suggests they didn't improve after the interval.
Yeah, I mean...
and they only drew, and like, where are they? 6th, 8th? Somewhere decent in the table? I should really know. John, you know, don't you?
They're 6th, yeah.
Thank you, John.
I think,
Thank you, John.
Yeah, look, on the one hand, I think getting a point against a Bournemouth team who are actually very good at the moment is probably no shakes at all. But like, I also think that from the West Ham point of view, holding on for a draw against Bournemouth at home is probably not the most inspiring of attitudes to come out onto a football pitch with. But yesterday they were abject, absolutely abject. They relied on a Mohamed Kudus penalty to keep them in the game. Beyond that, they put up 0.4 open play expected goals, so they're really not threatening in any sort of way beyond set pieces, which we know West Ham, they're going to do that. But when you consider the amount of money they spent on that squad, they were missing Lucas Paqueta, but apart from that, this is not far off one of their strongest squads. I think you probably expect a little bit more from a team like that, especially when they are sixth in the table. And yeah, I mean, you look at the trivot, as they say, that they had of Calvin Phillips and Edson Alvarez and who's the Thomas Souček, of course. Just an incredibly cloggy midfield. They had James Ward-Prowse as well, and then it was just Jared Bowen and Mohamed Kudus in front of them. Just sort of very, very stodgy approach to the game. Bournemouth, I thought, were excellent. For the most part, they could have finished a few more chances and been 3-0 up going in at half time. But yeah, it's a funny one because we've had this conversation a million times this season. David Moyes is effective, so on the one hand, you deal with it, and on the other hand, you then have to ask questions about aesthetics. What do the fans want to see? Make the most of being sixth in the table. Yeah, you might not enjoy the football, but you're there, right? Last season you were in a relegation battle, so we can have these conversations till the cows come home. But I think that yesterday was really towards the nadir end of the David Moyes spectrum.
Let's definitely not keep having those conversations. I do want to come back on the word you've made up, or has been made up of trivot, as in like a triple pivot.
Yes.
Are we having that? We're never writing that one down, are we?
It's an Italian word, I believe. Is it not Mourinho? Or maybe it's Spanish. It was Mourinho who used it somewhere. So three defensive midfielders in a midfield. So 3 pivots. Yeah.
I take it all back. I take it all back. If Jose's come up with it, it's absolutely
who are we to say anything against it?
David Moyes back at Manchester United, Tim. Is there anything he has left to prove, or is this literally really old news?
I mean, he could try winning a game at Old Trafford when he's not the manager there. It's been 17 matches in his managerial career away at Old Trafford, and he's not won a single one. I think he's lost 13 and drawn 4. But yeah, for no reason whatsoever, maybe he could do it this weekend because Man United do that. They win a couple of games unconvincingly. They scrape past Newport County. They beat Wolves in the 97th minute when they should have won the game comfortably, having let Wolves back into the game inexplicably. And yeah, they do that. They avert the crisis and then they lurch back into a crisis. That's what they do. And West Ham, yeah, they didn't win in January at all. I think they went out the cup. They drew pretty much every Premier League game. Drawn again against Bournemouth, poor result in the week. And then Moyes goes and pulls one out the bag like he did when they beat Arsenal and Man United in December. And of course, he ended his Emirates hoodoo with that win 2-0 at the Emirates. So, for some reason, maybe I'm backing him to do it again. Don't know why, Michael. But we'd all like to see that, wouldn't we? Moyes giving it the big in front of the away end, winning at Old Trafford.
Great pictures. I do want to get the predictions. I do just want to briefly reflect on the fact that maybe West Ham against Bournemouth, West Ham were distracted because they were busy, obviously, during the deadline day shenanigans. They didn't have Said Benrahma or Pablo Fornals available because they were both being primed for moves elsewhere, which then didn't go through. Lyon were hoping to sign Benrahma, Real Betis were hoping to sign Fornals. And once the deadline passed, both of those clubs were blaming West Ham for not sorting the deals out because it was all in place. So I'm sure we're going to find out a lot more news about that one. But, maybe West Ham were busy trying to do that and it just didn't come off. And now they'll be free to focus on the football. And obviously, they've also got Fornals and Benrahma available, Nnamdi, which is great news for West Ham fans. So there we go. Should we do some predictions? John, you can go first on this one.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Like Tim said, Man United have the proclivity to mess up after they've grasped victory from the jaws of defeat, or the jaws of drawing, I guess, in this case. But also, this is a game where I think they can struggle. West Ham are going to play well when they can sit deep and then hit on the break. Man United like to play in that way as well, but they'll be given the ball a lot more than maybe they would want to by West Ham. So it's one of those ones where the conditions are set up for a West Ham win. But good things never happen, so I'm going to say Man United somehow win this 2-1.
Oh, Tim's shaking his head. Go on, Tim.
Good things do happen, John Mackenzie. 2-0 West Ham. Come on.
Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Nnamdi?
Seeing how United games have been so far and how interesting they've been and how ugly and boring West Ham games can be, I'm going to say a 1-1 draw.
Oh, this is suitably better. I mean, it feels like a game that I would predict West Ham to win because it's like, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then United just rock up and win. So I'll go for a 2-1 United win. And that is that. Right. Oh, we've got a cracker in Italy. John, Derby d'Italia. Eh?
Yeah, the Derby of Italy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, fun one. It's right at the top of the Serie A table. It is the title challenge game for Serie A this season, and yeah, it's a sort of really interesting narrative between these two teams. You've got Inter, who are comfortably the best team in Italy, I would say, and this is one of the best teams in Serie A for a good decade or so, I would say, going back to the mid 2010s. But then we've also got Juventus, who by hook or by crook have managed to turn things around, and I think they're a point behind Inter with a game in hand. So a win here would definitely make the title race look a lot more viable for them. I personally think that Inter are probably going to end up winning regardless, but for whatever reason, Max Allegri has got Juventus playing. Do I want to say good football? I don't know if I want to say good football because usually Allegri is famous for these sort of ground out 1-0 wins, but recently they've been actually scoring quite a few goals. So Dusan Vlahovic has finally started putting them in from all over on the pitch. They've got a sort of fun. They've got a fun squad. They've got a few youngsters coming through as well, so they've been able to make the most of those. But interestingly enough, both teams playing 3-5-2 formations, which you don't see a huge amount of elite teams using these days. So yeah, very much a case of the 3-5-2 derby for me. But yeah, it's going to be a really good game, and it's on, I think, Sunday evening, sort of the late kickoff, so 7:45. So there's no excuse for people not to go and have a watch and see what's going on in Serie A this season.
Lovely watching Arsenal against Liverpool, then Inter against Juve, Tim, on Sunday evening. It'll be a cracker. You going to tune in for that one?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it can't be a title decider. And then it's by Bayern next week as well, next weekend in Germany. So there's a couple of big games coming up in Europe.
Brighton are in a funny place because they haven't won for a while, have they? There's a fair few defeats now, and obviously getting thrashed at Luton.
Yeah, there's lots of teams looking for new managers. They've got to keep De Zerbi at Brighton, so this is all tactical on their part, I think.
Excellent. I'm glad we got to the bottom of that. Brentford are good against Manchester City. They did the double over them last year. So that's a fun one on Monday night, Nnamdi.
It will be a fun one. Most definitely be a fun one watching Neil Mope fresh off his antics again. See if he's got his darts out as well.
Well, I think we're covered for the rest of the fixtures, aren't we? There's some.
Well, I was going to say.
Sorry, Tim. Sorry.
Well, we've got to have a look at Sheffield United Villa for the specific reason. I don't know if you saw Chris Wilder's quotes in the week. Honestly, like, I still can't believe he said it, to be honest. But anyone who missed it, he said he went into the referee's room at half time and the assistant ref was eating a sandwich. And this annoyed Wilder like nothing you've ever seen. He's eating a sandwich in front of a Premier League manager. He's furious. So if Paul Tierney, who's got Sheffield United Villa at the weekend, has got anything about him, he'll turn up with a hamper of a variety of sandwiches and just start munching away right in Wilder's face.
I watched that interview whilst eating a sandwich and felt a little bit guilty. I was there with my sandwich midway through, and he was like, "What a lack of respect!" And I was like, I just popped my sandwich down and sat there with my hands folded. Yeah, I knew. I was told.
I mean, I imagine the official was literally sitting in his little dressing room, or maybe medium-sized dressing room, eating a sandwich when Chris Wilder walks in. He's probably thinking, I've got half time, I've got 10 minutes, 15 minutes max for this sandwich, and you've come in here speaking to me. Maybe he wanted some respect. Who knows?
Temporarily stepping away from Sandwichgate, if you don't mind as well. Just want a big mention to the mighty Nigeria, who are gonna steamroll Angola tonight, and qualify for the AFCON semi-finals.
I love that shout. And between the AFCON and the Asian Cup, we might get some players back in in domestic
course.
action, or not,
Yeah.
of course, fingers crossed. Well, I think that's a lovely place to end the pod. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Thank you, John.
No, thank you for having me, and it's great to be back in the booth, the audio booth with you, Michael.
Indeed, quite. Tim, lovely to see you. Take care. Have a good weekend. What you got planned?
Just going to watch all the football.
Exactly. That's your job. Well done, Tim. Nnamdi, have a good one.
Thank you very much, Michael.
I will be back with you on Monday. Adam, of course, will be back with you on Friday, as usual. Thanks all for listening.
If you like this video, click subscribe for more content like this. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season to bring you the inside track to the biggest stories in football. If you'd like to listen to the full episodes for free, search the Athletic Football Podcast wherever you get your podcasts from.